The afternoon sun hung heavy over the neighborhood, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer above the pavement and turned parked cars into ovens. Cicadas buzzed in the trees like tiny electric saws, and the scent of hot asphalt mixed with the faint sweetness of blooming jasmine from someone's backyard. On Maple Street, a quiet, tree-lined lane where most houses had tidy lawns and porch swings that rarely moved anymore. A small figure wrestled with a folding card table at the edge of a driveway. She was 9 years old, barefoot, with sun-bleached hair pulled into a messy ponytail and knees already smudged with dust. Her t-shirt, faded from too many washes, read, "Future Ocean Explorer" in peeling letters. She'd found it at a thrift store last summer and refused to take it off for weeks. Now it was her lemonade stand uniform. She unfolded the table with more determination than grace, wincing as one leg snapped into place with a loud click. A gust of wind nearly toppled it, but she caught it just in time, pressing her small hands flat against the surface like she was holding back the whole world. On top of the table sat a pitcher of lemonade, cloudy, not too sweet, made the old-fashioned way with real lemons her mom had squeezed before leaving for her second shift at the hospital. Next to it, a stack of paper cups, a jar labeled "Tips, Please," with 3 quarters and 2 dimes inside, and a hand-drawn sign taped to a ruler stuck in the grass. The sign said, "Cold Lemonade, 50C" in careful block letters with a wobbly sun and a smiling lemon drawn in yellow crayon. She'd spent 20 minutes on that sun, making sure the rays looked cheerful. She needed this to work. Not because she wanted money, though a new sketchbook would be nice, but because she needed to feel like she could do something. Anything. Things at home had been quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the heavy, stretched, thin kind that made your chest feel tight. Her dad used to whistle while fixing the fence or tinkering with the lawnmower. Now he sat on the couch for hours, staring at his phone, his shoulders slumped like they carried invisible bricks. He hadn't whistled in weeks. Not since the call from the construction site. Layoffs, he'd told her mom in a voice so low it barely reached the kitchen. Temporary, he added, but his eyes didn't believe it. Her mom tried to keep things normal. She still packed her lunch with a little note. "You're my brave girl." Still kissed her forehead before leaving for work. But Lila noticed how her hands shook when she counted bills at the kitchen table late at night, how she'd sigh when she thought no one was listening. And last week, over burnt toast and weak tea, Lila overheard the words that made her stomach drop. "We might have to look at smaller places. Maybe even out of the district." Out of the district meant a new school, new teachers. No more walking to Maya's house after class. No more Mrs. Delgado's science lab with the pet hermit crab named Captain Crunch. No more knowing where the bathroom was without thinking. The thought of it made her throat close up. So she'd come up with a plan. If she could earn enough, maybe not to stop the move, but to show her parents she could help, maybe things wouldn't feel so hopeless. Maybe she could buy back a little control. She poured herself a test cup, took a sip, and frowned. Too tart. She added another spoonful of sugar from the bag tucked under the table, stirred it with a plastic spoon, and tried again. Better. She wiped her hands on her shorts and stood tall, smoothing her shirt. A car approached, a silver sedan, and her heart jumped. She waved shyly, forcing a smile. The car slowed, then sped up again without even glancing her way. Her shoulders slumped. Another one. She'd been out here for nearly an hour. 3 cars had passed. None stopped. She sat down on the curb, pulling her knees to her chest. The concrete was hot through her shorts, but she didn't move. She watched a line of ants march across a crack in the sidewalk, carrying crumbs twice their size. They knew what they were doing. They had a job. A purpose. She felt a lump rise in her throat. What if no one ever stopped? What if her lemonade sat there all day getting warm and flat just like everything else? She thought about packing it up, going inside, hiding under her blanket with her sketch pad and drawing dolphins leaping through waves, somewhere far away from layoffs and moving boxes and silence. But then she remembered the look on her dad's face that morning when he tried to fix the toaster and gave up halfway through. That look of giving up. She couldn't let herself do that too. Not yet, so she stood back up, straightened the sign, fluffed the single sunflower she'd picked from the neighbor's garden, with permission. Mrs. Ruiz had winked and said, "For your stand, mija." She poured a fresh cup, set it near the edge like a sample, and practiced her pitch in her head. "Cold lemonade. Only 50 cents. Made with real lemons." She said it out loud, then cringed. Too loud, too eager. She tried again, softer. Lemonade if you're thirsty. Better time crawled. A dog barked 2 houses down. A plane droned high overhead. She watched the shadows from the oak trees stretch longer across the street. The sun dipped lower, turning golden, but the heat didn't let up. Sweat trickled down her back. She was about to call it quits when she heard it. The low rumble of an engine, different from the usual neighborhood cars. Deeper, slower. She turned. A black SUV, sleek and unmarked, rolled to a stop right in front of her driveway. Tinted windows. Quiet. It idled there for a moment, and she held her breath, unsure if she should be nervous. Then the driver's door opened. Out stepped a man. Tall, lean, wearing a plain black t-shirt and jeans that looked soft from years of wear. He had a beard not too long and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. The lemonade pitcher, the handmade sign, her scuffed sandals. But there was no hurry in him. No phone in his hand. No sunglasses hiding his expression. He just looked at her. And then he smiled. Not a big showy smile, but a quiet one, like he recognized something in her. "Hey," he said, his voice calm like a cool breeze. "You selling lemonade?" She nodded, suddenly shy. "Yes, 50 cents. "Perfect," he said, walking toward the table. He didn't loom or tower. He moved like he was trying not to startle her. He stopped a few feet away and waited, as if giving her space to serve him. She fumbled with the cups, her fingers suddenly clumsy, and poured one carefully, making sure not to spill. She held it out. He took it gently, their fingers not quite touching. "Thanks." He sipped it, then nodded slowly. "That's good. Really good. You made this yourself?" She nodded again, finding her voice. "Yeah, with my mom's help." She squeezed the lemons. "She's got good taste," he said, and there was something in his tone. Not pity, not condescension, just warmth. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded bill. "How much for 2 cups?" $1, she said, surprised. He handed her a $20 bill. "Keep the change," her eyes widened. "Oh no, that's too much. I can't." "It's okay," he said, holding up a hand. "Really. You earned it." He took another sip, then glanced around the quiet street. "You out here all by yourself?" "Yeah," she said. "My mom's at work, Dad's home." She didn't say more. Didn't need to. He studied her for a second, not in a creepy way, but like he was really seeing her. Like he could tell the lemonade stand wasn't just about lemonade. Then he asked, so softly it almost got lost in the cicada song, "You okay, kiddo?" And that was it. That tiny question, asked with such genuine care, cracked something open inside her. The lump in her throat swelled. Her eyes stung. She looked down at her sandals, blinking fast, trying to hold it together. But the words came out anyway, shaky and small. "My dad says we might have to move, and I don't want to leave my school." She expected him to say something like, "It'll be okay," or "New places can be fun." Adults always said that, but he didn't. He just stood there for a moment, quiet, like he was letting her words settle. Then he crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. His knees cracked softly as he did. "Moving's hard," he said, "especially when you didn't ask for it." He paused. "You know, when I was about your age, my family had to move a lot too. Sometimes we didn't know where we'd sleep the next week. I used to sell comic books door to door just to help my mom buy groceries." She looked up, surprised. "You did?" He nodded. "Yeah. Felt pretty small back then. Like the world was too big and I didn't matter much." He met her eyes. "But you know what? You do matter. And what you're doing right now, standing out here in this heat, trying to help your family, that's brave. That's huge." She didn't know what to say. No one had ever called her brave before. Not like that. He stood up slowly, brushing dust off his jeans. "You've got a good heart," he said. "Don't let anyone tell you different." He glanced at his watch, then back at her. "Hey, do you like drawing? I saw your sign." "You've got talent." She nodded, a little smile tugging at her lips. "I want to be a marine biologist. I draw sea animals." "Marine biologist, huh?" He smiled. "That's an awesome dream." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small notepad and pen. He scribbled something quickly, tore out the page, and handed it to her. It was a name and a phone number. "There's a place downtown. Offers free art and science programs for kids. Summer stuff. Tell them I sent you. They'll take care of you." She took the paper, staring at it like it was a treasure map. "Thank you," she whispered. He gave her one last nod, that quiet smile returning. "You're gonna be okay, Lila." And then he got back in his SUV, started the engine and drove away, leaving her standing there in the golden light, clutching a napkin with a phone number and a heart that felt a little less heavy than it had an hour ago. The lemonade pitcher was still half full. The sunflower drooped slightly. But for the first time all day, she didn't feel alone. She felt seen. And sometimes, on a hot afternoon when the world feels like it's crumbling, that's enough to keep you standing. The black SUV disappeared around the corner, its quiet engine fading into the hum of the neighborhood. For a long moment, Lila just stood there, bare feet planted on the sun-warmed concrete. The crumpled napkin clutched in her hand like it might vanish if she let go. The air still smelled of hot pavement and lemon rinds, but something had shifted. It wasn't magic, no sudden wind, no choir of birds, but the weight that had been pressing on her chest since that morning over burnt toast felt lighter. Not gone, just bearable. She looked down at the napkin again. The handwriting was neat but not fancy. Just clear, careful letters. Ocean Horizons Youth Program. 323-555-0187. Below it, in smaller script, ask for Rosa. That was it. No title, no logo, no promises. Just a name and a number. And the words, "Tell them I sent you," echoing in her head like a secret password. She carefully folded the napkin and tucked it into the front pocket of her shorts, right over her heart. Then she glanced at the lemonade pitcher. It was still half full. The ice long melted, the surface dull under the late afternoon sun. She should pack up. Her mom would be home soon, exhausted from another double shift, and Lila didn't want her to worry about finding her still out here. But before she could start stacking cups, a strange thought stopped her. What if he comes back? She shook her head at herself. Of course he wouldn't. He'd been kind, sure, but people like that, people who drove quiet black cars and spoke softly and noticed things, didn't usually stick around. They passed through lives like breezes, leaving behind a cool spot and a memory. Still, she waited another 5 minutes just in case. No car returned. Just Mrs. Ruiz watering her geraniums across the street, who gave her a wave and a thumbs up. Inside the house, the silence felt different now. Not empty, but waiting. Her dad was on the couch again, but this time he was flipping through a newspaper. Real paper, not his phone. That was new. He looked up when she came in, his eyes tired but present. "Hey, Lemonade Queen," he said, his voice rough but warm. "Sell out?" "Almost," she said, not quite lying. She set the pitcher in the fridge and leaned against the counter. "A nice man bought a cup. Gave me a big tip." Her dad raised an eyebrow. "Big tip, huh? You sure he wasn't just being nice because you're 9 and running a stand in 100-degree heat?" She shrugged but couldn't hide the small smile. "He said I was brave." That made her dad sit up a little straighter. He studied her face like he was trying to read something between the lines. "Brave, huh?" He didn't ask more. Maybe he didn't need to. Maybe he saw it. The way her shoulders weren't hunched anymore, the way her eyes had a little light in them. "Well," he said finally, folding the paper slowly, "brave people deserve dinner. How about I make grilled cheese? Extra crispy." Her stomach growled before she could answer. "Yes, please." While he moved around the kitchen, the clink of plates, the sizzle of butter in the pan, Lila sat at the table, pulling the napkin from her pocket again. She traced the letters with her finger. Ocean Horizons. It sounded like something from one of her library books, the ones with glossy photos of coral reefs and sea turtles. She'd never heard of it. But then again, she'd never expected a stranger to crouch on her curb and tell her about selling comic books as a kid. That night, after grilled cheese and a rare game of cards, her dad let her win, but not too obviously. She lay in bed with her sketch pad open. Instead of drawing dolphins, she drew the man's hands, strong but gentle, holding the paper cup. She didn't draw his face. She didn't need to. She remembered the way he'd looked at her, not like she was a cute kid with a lemonade stand, but like she was a person with thoughts and fears and dreams worth listening to. The next morning, her mom was already gone, early shift, but her dad was making coffee, dressed in clean jeans and a shirt that didn't have paint stains. He looked different, less like a shadow, more like himself. "You got plans today?" he asked, pouring coffee into his chipped mug. "I was thinking of setting up the stand again," she said carefully. He nodded. "Okay, but maybe stay in the shade this time? And drink water. You looked a little red yesterday." She blinked. He'd noticed. That was new too. But as she gathered her supplies, the pitcher, the cups, the sunflower, now slightly wilted but still standing, she kept thinking about the napkin. What if it was nothing? What if she called and they laughed? Or said it was a mistake? Or worse, what if they said it cost money? She didn't have any to spare. Still, by mid-morning, curiosity won. While her dad tinkered with the broken toaster, actually trying this time, she slipped into the hallway and picked up the landline, the one they kept for emergencies. Her hands shook as she dialed. Each ring felt like a drumbeat in her ears. On the fourth ring, a woman answered. Ocean Horizons Youth Program, this is Rosa. How can I help you? Layla froze. Rosa, the name on the napkin. She swallowed. Hi. My name is Lila, and someone told me to call you, he said. He said to tell you he sent me. There was a pause. Not a long one, but enough to make her heart jump into her throat. Then the woman's voice softened like she'd just recognized a familiar tune. Oh, you're the lemonade girl. Lila's breath caught. You know about me? Rosa chuckled, warm and low. Let's just say your friend called ahead. Said you're into marine science and you've got a good heart. We've got a spot open in our summer explorer track. Field trips to the aquarium, water testing at the beach, even a night snorkel session in the kelp forest tank. All free. Starts Monday. Lila's knees went weak. She leaned against the wall. Free? Completely.
Scholarships covered.
And your friend? Well, let's just say he's been helping us keep the lights on for years. Quietly. Lila didn't know what to say. Tears pricked her eyes, but they weren't sad tears. They were the kind that come when something good sneaks up on you when you've stopped expecting it. Can I come see it? She asked. Of course, Rosa said. Come by this afternoon. We're open till 5. Bring your sketchbook, I hear you draw. After she hung up, she stood there for a full minute, phone still pressed to her ear, heart pounding like a drum. Then she ran to the kitchen. Her dad looked up from the toaster, which now had a hopeful glow inside. Dad, she said, breathless, can we go downtown? There's a place, a program. It's about the ocean, and it's free. And they know about me? He wiped his hands on a towel, studying her face. Saw the spark, the real one, not the forced one she'd been faking for weeks. Without asking for details, without hesitation, he said, grab your shoes. Let's go. The drive downtown was quiet, but not the heavy kind. Her dad rolled down the windows and the city sounds poured in. Honking horns, distant sirens, the rumble of buses. Lila pressed her forehead to the glass, watching palm trees blur past. She'd been downtown before, but only for doctor's appointments or the occasional museum trip. This felt different. Like she was heading toward something, not away from it. Ocean Horizons wasn't in a fancy building. It was tucked into a converted warehouse near the Arts District, painted in bright blues and greens with murals of whales and octopuses climbing the walls. Inside, it smelled like salt water and chalk and old books. Kids milled around, some older, some younger, working on projects, building model buoys, labeling fish diagrams, painting ocean layers on long scrolls of paper. Rosa was exactly how Lila imagined. Mid-50s, silver-streaked hair in a bun, wearing a t-shirt that said, "Ask me about phytoplankton." She greeted them with a hug for Lila and a firm handshake for her dad. "So you're the lemonade stand hero," she said, winking. Lila blushed. "I'm not a hero." "No," Rosa said, leading them through the space. "But you showed up. That's the first step." She showed them the lab area with microscopes and water samples, the art corner with shelves of colored pencils and marine field guides, the small theater where they watched documentaries. "We believe science and creativity go hand in hand," she explained. "You can't protect what you don't understand, and you can't understand it if you don't care." Her dad stood quietly, taking it all in. Lila saw his eyes linger on the scholarship board, a wall covered in thank you notes from kids who'd gone on to study marine biology, environmental law, even ocean engineering. One note read, "Because of this place, I knew I mattered." When they stepped back outside, the sun was lower, casting long shadows. Her dad didn't say much at first, just unlocked the car and opened her door like he always did. But as they pulled away, he reached over and squeezed her shoulder. "You're gonna love it here," he said, his voice thick. She nodded, looking back at the bright blue door. For the first time in months, she believed him. That night, she didn't draw sea creatures. She drew the Ocean Horizons mural, the giant blue whale with stars in its eye. And in the corner, tiny but clear, she added a lemonade stand with a single sunflower. She didn't know if she'd ever see the man again. But she didn't need to. He'd given her more than a phone number. He'd given her a door, and she was walking through it. Monday morning arrived with a nervous energy that buzzed under Lila's skin like static. She'd laid out her clothes the night before, her future Ocean Explorer t-shirt, washed and dried extra carefully, clean shorts and her favorite sneakers with the slightly scuffed toes. Her backpack held her sketchbook, a new set of colored pencils Rosa had mailed her after their visit. Starter kit, the note said, a water bottle and a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in wax paper. She checked the zipper 3 times. Her dad drove her downtown again, but this time he didn't just drop her off. He walked her to the bright blue door of Ocean Horizons, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his steps slower than usual. He didn't say much, but she could tell he was watching everything. The kids laughing in the courtyard, the murals on the walls, the way Rosa greeted each student by name as they arrived. When they reached the entrance, he stopped and crouched down, just like the man had done on her curb. "You okay?" he asked, echoing the same words, though his voice was rougher, less practiced. She nodded, but her stomach fluttered. "What if I don't know anyone?" He smiled, a real one this time, not the tired ghost of one he'd been wearing for weeks. "You'll know Rosa, and you'll know the ocean. That's enough for day one." Rosa met them at the door, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a loose braid today, wearing a necklace made of sea glass. "Ready to dive in?" she asked, handing Lila a lanyard with her name and a cartoon octopus. "Group A starts in the lab. We're testing pH levels in local water samples. Don't worry, you'll catch on fast." Her dad lingered just a moment longer, watching as Lila stepped inside. She turned once and saw him still standing there, hands in pockets, shoulders a little less slumped than they'd been in months. Then she turned the corner and entered the lab. It smelled like salt and vinegar and something sharp, chemicals but not scary ones. Kids were gathered around long tables, peering into beakers, jotting notes in spiral notebooks. A young man with sun-bleached hair and a tattoo of a manta ray on his forearm introduced himself as Eli, the lead educator. "Today," he said, holding up a clear vial of murky water, "we're playing detective. This came from the river near downtown. Is it healthy? Is it hurting the fish? You're gonna find out." Lila found a seat next to a girl about her age with braids and paint smudges on her elbows. "I'm Maya," the girl whispered. "First day too?" "Yeah," Lila said, relief washing over her. They worked together, dipping strips of paper into samples, comparing colors to a chart. "If it's yellow, it's acidic," Maya explained like she'd done this 100 times. "Bad for frogs." Lila wrote it down carefully, then sketched the color changes in the margin of her notebook. Eli noticed and leaned over. "Artist and scientist," he said. "Perfect combo. We need people who can see the beauty and the data." By lunchtime, Lila had forgotten to be nervous. She sat on the courtyard steps with Maya and 2 boys who were arguing good-naturedly about whether sharks or octopuses were smarter. Someone passed around homemade cookies. The sun felt warm but not punishing. For the first time in weeks, she laughed, really laughed, when Maya accidentally spilled her juice and shouted, "It's just like an oil spill. We need containment booms," in a mock-serious voice. That afternoon, they went to the art room. Rosa handed out sheets of thick paper. "Draw what the ocean sounds like to you," she said. "Not what it looks like. What it sounds like." Lila closed her eyes. She thought of the waves at Santa Monica Pier, the hiss of foam on sand, the distant cry of gulls, the low hum of a boat engine. But underneath it all, she heard something else, the quiet voice on her curb saying, "You matter." She opened her eyes and began to draw. Not waves, not fish, but a single lemon tree under a wide sky, its branches heavy with fruit, and beneath it a small table with a pitcher and a cup. In the distance, a black SUV driving away, leaving ripples in the air like sound waves. Rosa stood behind her for a long moment. "That's powerful," she said softly. "The ocean isn't just water. It's memory. It's connection." When her dad picked her up that evening, she talked the whole way home, about pH levels, about Maya's plan to invent a robot that cleans microplastics, about how Eli used to work on a research vessel off the coast of Baja. Her dad listened, nodding, asking questions. "So, you liked it?" he finally asked, pulling into their driveway. "Loved it," she said, already unzipping her backpack to show him her drawings. Over the next few days, a rhythm settled in. Mornings at Ocean Horizons, afternoons sketching at the kitchen table or walking to the library to read about coral bleaching and sea turtle migration. Her dad started leaving the house earlier. Not for job interviews, not yet, but to walk. Just walk. Sometimes he'd come back with a coffee and sit on the porch watching the neighborhood. Other times he'd fix something small, a loose hinge, a leaky faucet. Tiny repairs, but they mattered. One Thursday, Ocean Horizons took the group to the aquarium, not the big tourist one, but a smaller research facility near the marina where scientists studied local marine life. They got to touch sea stars in a tide pool tank, watch biologists feed rescued sea lions, and peer through microscopes at plankton so tiny they looked like galaxies. Lila pressed her nose to the glass of a kelp forest tank, mesmerized by the way the fronds swayed in the artificial current. A green sea turtle glided past, ancient and calm. She pulled out her sketchbook and started drawing, her pencil moving fast. She didn't notice Rosa standing beside her until she spoke. "He came here once," Rosa said quietly. Lila looked up. "Who? The man who sent you?" Rosa smiled faintly. "He doesn't like crowds, so he came early before opening. Just walked through the exhibits, watched the turtles. Said it reminded him of a place he visited as a kid. Somewhere quiet by the sea where he felt safe." Lila's pencil stilled. "Does he come often?" "Not often. But when he does, he asks about the kids. Not in a flashy way, just, 'How's the program going? Are they learning? Are they happy?'" Rosa paused. "He doesn't do it for thanks. He does it because he remembers what it's like to feel like the world's too big and you're too small." Lila looked back at the turtle, now resting on the sandy bottom, one flipper curled under its shell. She thought about her dad on the couch, about the silence in their house, about the fear of losing everything familiar. And she thought about a man in a black t-shirt stopping on a hot afternoon, not because he needed lemonade, but because he saw a kid who needed to be seen. That weekend, her dad did something unexpected. He cleared off the dining table, the one that had been buried under bills and takeout menus, and laid out a big sheet of poster board. "I was thinking," he said, "maybe we could map out your marine biologist plan. Schools, programs, what you'd need to study." She stared at him. "Really?" "Yeah." He pulled out a notebook. "I've been looking up some community college courses, too. Maybe I could take something part-time. Get back into building, but smarter this time. Sustainable design, maybe." He didn't say it like a promise, more like a possibility. But it was the first time he'd talked about the future without his voice dropping. They spent the afternoon sketching timelines, writing down dream schools, circling local internships. Lila drew little sea creatures in the margins. Her dad laughed when she turned a scholarship logo into a smiling octopus. It wasn't a solution to their money problems, but it was a start, a shared one. On Sunday night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the lemonade stand. It was still set up at the end of the driveway, though she hadn't used it since that day. The sunflower had dried into a brittle brown curl, but she couldn't bring herself to throw it away. It felt like a marker, a before and after. Before, she'd been trying to fix things alone. After, she'd learned that help can come in quiet ways from unexpected places, and that accepting it isn't weakness. It's how you keep going. She opened her sketchbook to a fresh page. At the top, she wrote, "Things I've learned this week. Plankton are the lungs of the ocean. Sea stars can regrow arms. Kindness doesn't always wear a cape. Sometimes it wears a black t-shirt and drives a quiet car. You don't have to fix everything today. Just show up." She closed the book and turned off the light. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like it was breathing, and so was she. The weeks passed like tides, steady, predictable, but always bringing something new to the shore. Lila settled into the rhythm of Ocean Horizons like it was a second home. Mornings began with the smell of coffee from her dad's mug and the rustle of her backpack being zipped. Afternoons ended with sun-warmed skin, salt in her hair from beach cleanups, and pages of her sketchbook filled with sea slugs, tide charts, and notes about ocean acidification. She even started a small journal where she logged water temperatures at the local creek and sketched the changes in the kelp beds they monitored from the pier. Her dad had started waking up earlier, not just to walk but to make breakfast. Real breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast with jam, even pancakes on Saturdays. He'd found a part-time gig helping a local contractor retrofit old houses with solar panels. Nothing glamorous, but it was work that felt meaningful. Turns out, he told her one morning, flipping a pancake with surprising grace, I like building things that help, not just things that sell. He didn't say it like a grand revelation, just a quiet observation, but Lila heard the pride in it. At home, the silence had changed. It wasn't the thick, suffocating kind anymore. Now it was comfortable, like the quiet between notes in a song. Sometimes her dad would sit at the table with her while she drew, asking questions about the creatures she was sketching. So this one glows in the dark? He'd ask, pointing to a siphonophore. Why? And she'd explain bioluminescence like she was teaching a friend, not just reciting facts. He listened like he meant it. One afternoon, after a particularly intense session on microplastics, where they'd filtered seawater and counted tiny fragments under microscopes, Lila came home buzzing with frustration. It's everywhere, she told her dad, pacing the kitchen. Even in the fish we eat, even in the rain. She slammed her notebook down a little harder than she meant to. What's the point of learning all this if we can't fix it? He didn't tell her to calm down. Didn't say it'll be okay. Instead, he poured 2 glasses of lemonade, real lemons just like hers, and sat across from her. Maybe the point isn't to fix it all at once, he said slowly. Maybe the point is to care enough to try. One piece at a time. She looked at him, really looked. His eyes were tired but clear, present. And for the first time, she saw not just her dad, but a person who was also learning how to hope again. That weekend, Ocean Horizons hosted a family day. Parents, siblings, even grandparents were invited to join a guided exploration of the nearby estuary. Lila had mentioned it casually at dinner, not sure if her dad would want to go, he wasn't big on crowds, but he surprised her. I'll be there, he said like it was settled. Saturday morning dawned cool and overcast, the kind of day that made the ocean smell extra sharp and clean. Lila wore her Ocean Horizons lanyard proudly. When they arrived, Rosa greeted them with a wide smile. Glad you could make it, she said to her dad, shaking his hand like they were old friends. The group gathered near the marsh trail, about 20 kids and their families, plus a few educators with binoculars and field guides. Eli led the walk, pointing out herons nesting in the reeds, explaining how the estuary acted like a nursery for baby fish. Lila walked beside her dad, pointing out things she'd learned. See that ripple? That's a bat ray. Those shells, they're homes for hermit crabs. He nodded, asking questions, taking it all in. At one point, they stopped by a shallow pool where fiddler crabs scuttled sideways in the mud. Maya's little brother shrieked with delight as one waved its oversized claw. Lila crouched down, sketching quickly. Her dad crouched beside her, watching the crabs. They're tough, he said quietly. Living in mud, tides coming in and out. They just keep going. She looked at him. Yeah, she said. They do. Later, during a break, Rosa handed out homemade seaweed crackers and bottles of water. She sat next to Lila's dad on a driftwood log. She's got a gift, Rosa said, nodding toward Lila, who was showing Maya how to draw the curve of a pelican's beak. Not just the art, the way she sees connections between creatures, between people. That's rare. Her dad was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I was scared I'd let her down. That all this uncertainty would steal her spark. His voice was low, almost too soft to hear over the wind. But she's the one who reminded me it was still there. Rosa smiled. Sometimes kids are the ones who show us the way back. As the sun began to dip, casting long golden streaks across the water, the group gathered for a closing circle. Each kid shared one thing they'd learned or loved that day. When it was Lila's turn, she stood up, clutching her sketchbook. I learned that the ocean isn't just out there, she said, pointing toward the horizon. It's in us. In the air we breathe, the water we drink, and if we take care of it, it takes care of us. She paused, and I learned that help can come from anywhere, even a lemonade stand. A few parents chuckled softly. Her dad didn't laugh. He just looked at her with eyes that shone a little too bright. On the drive home, neither of them spoke much. But when they pulled into the driveway, her dad turned off the engine and sat for a moment. You know, he said, I've been thinking about that smaller place we talked about. Lila's stomach dropped. Are we still moving? Maybe, he said, but not because we're running. Because we're choosing. He explained that the solar retrofit job might lead to more steady work, Maybe even a chance to train as a technician, but it would mean moving closer to the industrial part of town. Smaller apartment, no yard, but half the rent. It's not forever, he said, but it might be for now. She thought about her school, her friends, the walk to Maya's house. Then she thought about the estuary, the kelp forest tank, the way her dad's shoulders had straightened over the past few weeks. Will I still be able to go to Ocean Horizons? She asked. Every day, he promised, even if I have to drive you. She nodded slowly. It wasn't the answer she'd hoped for, but it wasn't the end of the world either. It was just life. Messy, changing, but still full of possibilities. That night, she didn't draw sea creatures. She drew their old house, the lemonade stand at the curb, the oak tree in the front yard, the porch swing that never moved. Then, on a new page, she started sketching a new place. A small apartment building with a fire escape she could turn into a sky garden, a bus stop on the corner, and in the distance, the blue roof of Ocean Horizons. She added a tiny black SUV parked on the street just passing through. The next week, something unexpected happened. Her science teacher at school, Mrs. Delgado, the one with the hermit crab named Captain Crunch, pulled her aside after class. I heard about your work at Ocean Horizons, she said, adjusting her glasses. Rosa called me, said you've got a real eye for marine systems. She smiled. We're starting a school conservation club next month. I'd love for you to help lead it. Lila's heart leapt. Really? Really? You've got the passion and the knowledge. Mrs. Delgado lowered her voice. Between you and me, we could use someone who's actually seen plankton under a microscope. For the first time, Lila felt like her outside life, the one at Ocean Horizons, wasn't separate from her school life. It was all part of who she was becoming. At home, her dad started packing, not frantically but thoughtfully. He labeled boxes, kitchen, books, Lila's art. One evening, she found him holding her old Future Ocean Explorer t-shirt, the one she'd worn the day of the lemonade stand. This one's seen better days, he said, smiling. But it's got history. She took it from him and laid it on her bed like a relic. It's the one I was wearing when he stopped. He nodded. I think I'll keep it, she said. For luck. He didn't argue. Just folded it carefully and placed it in a box marked Keep Special. As the move date neared, Lila made a list of things she wouldn't lose. Her friendship with Maya, they promised to text every day. Her spot in the conservation club, her connection to the ocean. And something deeper, the belief that even when things fall apart, kindness can stitch them back together, one quiet act at a time. One evening, while sorting through old school projects, she found a crumpled drawing she'd made months ago, before the lemonade stand, before Ocean Horizons. It was a dark, scribbled ocean with a tiny boat sinking in the waves. She held it for a moment, then tore it gently into pieces and dropped it in the recycling bin. In its place, she opened her sketchbook to a fresh page and drew a single lemon tree, its branches heavy with fruit, roots deep in the earth. Beneath it, a small table. On the table, a pitcher of lemonade full to the brim, catching the light. She didn't know if she'd ever see the man again. But she didn't need to. He'd given her more than a phone number or a kind word. He'd given her back her voice, the one that could say, I'm scared and I care and I'm still here, and that was enough to carry her through whatever came next. The new apartment wasn't much to look at from the outside. 3 stories of pale stucco with narrow balconies and a shared courtyard where a lone palm tree leaned like it was tired of standing straight. But inside it felt different. Cleaner somehow. Not because it was newer, but because it was chosen, not forced. Boxes were still stacked in corners, but the kitchen already smelled like garlic and onions. Her dad had started cooking again. Real meals, not just reheated leftovers. And on the tiny balcony, Lila had arranged a few potted plants she'd rescued from the old house, including a small lemon sapling she'd begged Rosa for. It'll take years to bear fruit, Rosa had warned. Maybe never. But Lila didn't care. It was a promise. A reminder. She'd been at Ocean Horizons for nearly 3 months now. The summer program had ended, but Rosa had offered her a spot in the after-school track, 2 days a week plus weekend field trips. Her dad made sure she never missed a session, even on days when his work ran late. He'd pick her up with a thermos of soup and a bag of oranges, sitting in the car while she packed up her sketches and notebooks, asking about her day like it mattered. And it did. School had started again, and with it the conservation club. Lila stood in front of her classmates during the first meeting, heart pounding but voice steady as she explained how microplastics enter the food chain. She didn't sound like a kid reciting facts. She sounded like someone who'd seen it, touched it, cared about it. Kids listened. Some even signed up to join beach cleanups. Mrs. Delgado watched from the back of the room, arms crossed, smiling like she'd known all along. One rainy afternoon in October, unusual for Southern California, but welcome, the sky turned gray and the streets glistened. Lila sat at the small kitchen table, finishing a detailed drawing of a juvenile sea lion for a school project. Her dad was on the couch, not scrolling, but reading a thick manual about solar panel installation. The only sounds were the soft scratch of her pencil, the turning of pages, and the gentle drum of rain on the window. Then the doorbell rang. They both looked up, surprised. No one ever visited. Her dad wiped his hands on his jeans and opened the door. Standing there was a woman in a dark coat, holding a small flat package wrapped in brown paper. "Delivery for Lila?" she asked. Lila came to the door, confused. "That's me." The woman handed her the package. "Signed for it," she said, then turned and walked back to a nondescript sedan parked at the curb. Lila closed the door, turning the package over in her hands. No return address. Just her name written in neat, familiar handwriting, the same as the napkin. Her breath caught. She carefully peeled back the paper. Inside was a hardcover book, The Hidden Life of the Ocean, filled with photographs so vivid they looked like windows into another world. Tucked between the first pages was a note written on plain white paper. "Lila. Saw this and thought of you. Keep looking closely. The world needs your eyes, and no fanfare. No request for thanks. Just a book, a note, and the quiet certainty that someone out there was paying attention. Not to the famous kid who met a celebrity, but to the real her, the girl who cared about plankton and drew sea turtles with too many details." She held the book to her chest, tears welling up. Not sad tears, but the kind that come when you realize you haven't been forgotten. Her dad didn't ask who it was from. He didn't need to. He just put a hand on her shoulder and said, "Looks like a good one." That night she wrote her own note. Not on fancy paper, just a page torn from her sketchbook. She drew a lemonade stand under a wide sky, a single sunflower blooming beside it. Below it she wrote, "You didn't fix everything, but you reminded me that good people still exist. Thank you for seeing me." She didn't know his address, but she remembered the name of the movie he was filming. She'd seen it on a poster downtown. So she addressed the envelope to the production office, care of the film's title, and dropped it in the mailbox the next morning, heart thumping like she was sending a message in a bottle out to sea. Weeks passed. Life went on. She presented her sea lion project to the class and got an A. Her dad passed his first certification exam and got a raise, small, but enough to breathe easier. They even went out for ice cream to celebrate, sitting on a bench by the bus stop, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. Meanwhile, on a dusty film set hundreds of miles away, a man in a worn black t-shirt took a break between takes. His trailer was sparse, just a cot, a cooler, a few books. On the wall above his desk, taped with care, was a child's drawing. A lemonade stand, a sunflower, and a single cup waiting to be filled. Beneath it, the words, "You reminded me that good people still exist." He looked at it every morning before work. Not because it flattered him, but because it reminded him why small things matter. He never posted it online. Never told interviewers about the girl with the picture and the quiet fear in her voice. He didn't need to. The story wasn't his to tell, but word has a way of traveling when it's rooted in truth. Rosa mentioned it once gently to a local reporter writing a piece about youth programs. The reporter didn't name names, but wrote about a quiet act of kindness that sparked a chain reaction, leading one child to marine science, a father back to purpose, and a family to hope. The article ran in the community paper. A teacher read it aloud in class. A neighbor mentioned it over the fence. And slowly, without fanfare, the story became part of the neighborhood's quiet lore, not as a celebrity encounter, but as a reminder that sometimes stopping for lemonade isn't just about being thirsty. Back in her new apartment, Lila kept drawing. She filled sketchbooks with kelp forests, tide pools, the curve of a dolphin's fin. She started a blog, just for her club, where she posted facts about local marine life and photos from their cleanups. No one famous followed it. But kids from 3 schools started sharing it. And that was enough. One Saturday, she and her dad took the bus to the coast. They walked the bluffs watching pelicans dive for fish, the ocean stretching out endless and alive. He didn't say much, just stood beside her, hands in pockets, breathing in the salt air. "You ever think about living by the sea?" she asked. He smiled. "Maybe one day. When you're running your own research lab," she laughed. "I'll name it after you." "The Lemonade Institute?" he teased. "The Ocean Stand," she shot back. They stood there for a long time, watching the waves roll in and out, steady as a heartbeat. She thought about the man in the black t-shirt wherever he was. She hoped he was okay. She hoped he knew, really knew, that what he'd done mattered. Not because he was famous, but because he chose in one ordinary moment to be human. And that's the thing about kindness. It doesn't need headlines. It doesn't need likes or shares or viral videos. It just needs to land, softly, surely, on the right heart at the right time, like a single drop of rain on dry ground, like a $20 bill for a 50-cent cup, like a note that says simply, "You're okay, kiddo." Lila never became famous. She didn't need to. She became herself, curious, caring, quietly determined. And years later, when she stood on the deck of a research vessel off the California coast collecting water samples under a sky full of stars, she'd think back to that hot afternoon on Maple Street, not as the day she met a movie star, but as the day she remembered she wasn't alone. Because the truth is, heroes don't always wear capes or save the world in one grand gesture. Sometimes they just stop their car, ask a question, listen, and in doing so, give someone else the courage to keep going, and that, more than any headline, more than any fame, is what changes everything.